I want to go change the subject just a little bit back to Bitcoin here, or to cryptocurrencies. We see in IPOs and tax jurisdictional arbitrage. Do you guys see that today in this developing cryptocurrency and also in ICOs? Chairman Clayton, you want to start with that?
Yeah.
And by the way, who pays for frivolous class action lawsuits? Who pays for that?
Shareholders.
Yeah. And investors, I would argue customers, employees, all of the above, right?
Yeah.
Would you answer that question for me, please?
So regulatory arbitrage is one of many issues that I see in this market. To be frank, tax loss and things like that are there. Of course they are, because it's record keeping. It's difficult to trace.
So where are the countries? South Korea and China are the ones that predominantly play in this world. You said before most of the current investment comes from the U.S. I'm not sure. I don't know if we all know enough yet to know that, right? South Korea and China are really heavily invested. In fact, China now, or South Korea has a new rule that says you have to use real name bank accounts in order to trade in this.
Yeah,
and those are the kinds of things I'm asking for. Is there arbitrage really going on around the world here?
There is certainly regulatory arbitrage, but what you're making a great point, because this was a largely unregulated space across the world, and now what you're seeing is each country taking a perspective, a view, action, et cetera, which also goes to how functional is this asset class, and how would we regulate it, and how does it work? There's a lot happening that is beyond the kind of understanding of your average investor. How would you know how?
So how can we, in two agencies here, I understand there's interaction between all of our regulatory agencies, but there's also another axis here that you have to coordinate. That's the other country regulators as well.
Correct.
So I'm asking both of you, what are you seeing and what are you anticipating we need to do to make sure, either legislatively or rulemaking, to combat that?
Chris, do you want to?
Sure. Let me jump in. I'll just identify two areas of arbitrage we're seeing. One is regulatory, which I want to come to, but actually we're also seeing price arbitrage as well. There's something known as the kimchi premium for Bitcoin traded in South Korea, because there's so much interest there that it drives the price up there slightly higher. So price arbitrage. But in the early days of many markets, every American city had a cotton exchange, and the prices were different there before you developed a national market. So here we have different regional and international markets, and perhaps as this market matures, if it matures, a singular price may develop. On terms of regulation, unfortunately, I think that some time ago, perhaps in the middle of last year, there was this perception that Bitcoin was off the regulatory grid. And one of the things that Chairman Clayton and I have been working so hard to do is to disabuse that notion. Now, we are limited in our regulatory authority to set regulatory standards on these underlying platforms. But when it comes to enforcement, when it comes to ICOs, we're using our full authority to drive the message. And other countries are doing that as well. And we've had frequent conversations. I spoke recently, or had communication recently with the head of the Japan Financial Service Agency about some things that were going on there. Jay Clayton spoke very eloquently at the FSB meeting recently in Basel, Switzerland. We are beginning our communication with other regulators, and I think the message is getting through that this is not off the grid. And I think part of that is now you're seeing it in the Bitcoin price. As the word is getting out that we will go after misconduct, I think you're starting to see that reflect in the price, and I think that's an important step.
Well, what little time we have left, I'd like both of you to respond to the pump and dump efforts that are underway right now. You see this beginning to develop. I know you're both involved in this. Can you both address what your agencies are doing to combat that?
Senator Perdue, this is one of the things that I'm worried that investors don't understand, which is when you have an unregulated exchange, the ability to manipulate prices goes up significantly. And just a few coordinated sales can change a price.
Or an email, a fraudulent email.
Correct. Yeah.
I've mentioned we formed this virtual currency enforcement task force. I mean, we've got some really good people on this, and we've brought 3 actions in the last few weeks. I said there are more to come. There are more to come. We are digging deep and learning a lot and seeing a lot, and I don't want to get ahead of that other than to say that we are we are working the beat hard right now.
And you have jurisdictional right to do that, right?
We have enforcement jurisdiction, yes, we do.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.